Now, would anyone want to ask questions? I think that'd be better.
Senator, can you give us an idea of what he told you and what his basic interests were and what your reaction to it was?
Yes. Well, I don't feel at liberty to quote Mr. Brezhnev because it was a lunch for the Foreign Relations Committee and other senators and congressmen, but I do feel at liberty to state my own reaction to it and anything that I had to say in respect of it. The General Secretary was questioned about the emigration policy of the Soviet Union and the impact upon that of the so-called Jackson Amendment. He produced a considerable set of figures, the general thrust of which I understood was an effort by him to take the position that the overwhelming majority, way up in the 95th percentile bracket, who sought to leave the Soviet Union for Israel or other countries and who were of Jewish origin, were permitted to do so, free of or notwithstanding the education tax. I then made the point, which I do feel at liberty to state verbatim, that the 77 senators who were behind the Jackson Amendment and its co-sponsors were just as, I felt, in the great majority, just as sincere and convinced as the General Secretary himself about the desire for the best relations between the Soviet Union and the United States, but had a feeling of deep conscience in accordance with the traditions of our own country and international agreements to both which the United States and the Soviet Union were parties, and this was implied in what I said, respecting the freedom of people who felt themselves persecuted in the Soviet Union or who felt that they wanted to leave the Soviet Union to go without being held for ransom. The General Secretary then produced another set of figures about those whom I called the refused and who we felt, based upon allegations which were made constantly in every way that's open to make allegations out of the Soviet Union, were being imprisoned, deprived of their jobs, ostracized, and otherwise persecuted for the sheer matter of asking to leave, and that therefore the figures were not telling the story because many who made application didn't even have their applications considered, and many more were just intimidated by what happened to many who did make application. And I cited the case right now of some 6 scientists of the Jewish faith who are on a hunger strike in the Soviet Union on this very issue today, right this minute. As I say, the General Secretary then cited another series of figures which broke down what he said was a list that had been given to him of the people who were allegedly in the condition, the so-called refused, to indicate that in part they had already received permission to leave, and in other parts the Soviet Union found that it was a security risk to them if they were permitted to leave and therefore wouldn't permit it. I do not